Thank you, computer. Well, it was one of those weeks, I don't know about you, but I had to think very hard about today's talk. And the harder I thought, the less was happening until the last day. Then it's a mad rush. I changed one of the songs last night. Serendipity, what a word. Well, I better explain it. It was voted as one of the 10 English words hardest to translate as of June 2004 by a British translation company. The dictionary has it as stated: the art of finding valuable or agreeable things not sought for. End of quote. Now, there are many varying shades of the one colour. So too are the subtle overtones to this word. The word was invented by Sir Horace Walpole in the mid-18th century, and he was the son of a British Prime Minister. He was a bit of a lad. And he loved reading and all these strange books. And he found a book called The Three Princes of Serendip. The name Serendip means Ceylon, which is now Sri Lanka. The book that inspired him was about the three princes who were always making discoveries by accident and sagacity if they were not always in question. They'd go up one way, then they'd find something that was even better. Some examples, I'm sure we've all got some in our life too. Christopher Columbus was on the way to find a new way to get to India and wound up finding the Americas. Thus, Native Americans are now called Indians. This is a textbook one. Cornflakes and wheat flakes, Wheaties, were accidentally discovered by the Kellogg brothers in 1898 when they left half-cooked wheat unattended for a day and tried to roll it into a mass, obtaining a flaky material instead of a sheet. So they got flakes. And there are others. Now, their father, the king, in this book, fearing his son's education may not be up to it at the moment, they're a bit sheltered in life, he sends them out into his kingdom, incognito, to gain experience amongst the peoples. One day, all of them will rule. I looked up some images to show you of the three wise men, but there's nothing incognito about them. They look as if they're pretty well off. They're already wise and alert, and their journey, even in the midst of good and not so good, they came across happy, unexpected events seemingly by accident. So I could build on the present day dictionary saying, the gift of finding agreeable things not actively sought for. The thing we need comes to hand at the exact moment we need it. How many of us had that in our lives? Sylvia's shaking her head. Perhaps we're on our way to a goal, a certain goal, but maybe sidetracked by other goals. We may start off in one direction, but our higher self leads us in another. I may as well make use of my Bible studies here. Genesis chapters 36 and 37, Joseph and the coat of many colours. Do many people know about that story? Joseph was his father's favourite son, which caused jealousy between him and his brothers. Behind their father's back, they sold him into slavery in Egypt. In slavery, he was wrongly sentenced to prison. But during this time, Joseph interpreted dreams for his fellow prisoners and gained their respect. One night the Pharaoh had a disturbing dream and Joseph was brought before him. In the dream were 7 fat cattle and 7 lean cattle. Joseph interpreted this as 7 years of feasting and 7 years of famine. That turned out to be correct. So Joseph was made prime minister and arranged for abundant food to be stored for when the lean times came, and they did. The plot thickens. His brothers, driven by poverty, arrive in Egypt looking for food. Eventually, Joseph reveals himself to them and said, "You might have meant it for evil, but God meant it for good." God weaves a pattern for us, but only when we get ourselves out of the way. Romans 8, verse 28. All things work together for good for them that love the God. And I put in brackets law after that. Sometimes we make a goal for ourselves that is not in line with our soul pattern. And it's quite shattering to realise that we've just been going the wrong way. The first masterclass at the conservatorium, I remember the lady, Mrs. Barwell, Professor Barwell, and she looked at all of us and said, "I'm looking forward to this. You all want to be concert pianists. Well, I'm going to tell you right now, many are called, few are chosen." And we all had this funny feeling. I didn't turn out to be a concert pianist, but music has been a good friend to me over the years. It's kept me going. And, so I didn't need to be a concert pianist. But I still love watching the old Google things like Carnegie Hall concerts with Rachmaninoff, Horowitz, and others. So on the way to our goal, life happens. Now we have a slide. I was very creative this week. Life is what happens to you when you are busy doing other things. I'm going to come back to John Lennon when we have a song later. And it's wise for us to pay attention to those inner promptings that can lead us to be where we need to be. We know that in driving. You're driving along and you think, "Oh, I'll go this way." And you realise after you've just missed a horrible long length of traffic. And as you look on television at the news, you think, "My goodness, look at them all going over Westgate," and things like that. I try and choose times that I feel makes it easier for me. So far, so good. Now, another slide. I love collecting old sheet music. Zephyrs from Melodyland by Krogman. From that book, I did my first appearance of playing in public. It was at Penguin Methodist Church, and it was a little song called Santa Claus Guards. I thought I was a concert pianist. Thank you. I played that on an old harmonium, which is another one of my picking. So now from that book, I used to teach from it when I was a music teacher because it was easy. The tunes sounded brilliant. They sounded, you can jazz them up if you don't know much about music to make them really big arrangements. Anyway, I gave book after book after book away, which I look back now and think, gee. And I lost the book. No one returned it. And I spent 20 years looking for that book. No, it hurt. I was upset. And I just thought, well, what's going to happen? I went to Alan's music shop, who were still working then in Collins Street, and I could get a photocopy of it. And I did, but it wasn't the same. So as you know, I live in Linton. There's a little town just before you get to it, and there's a second-hand shop. And there's this old bomb pump organ. $50. I couldn't help myself. No, we take pets in out of the cold, but I see these instruments and I just melt. I've got about 7 or 8 of them, but they all have something special. One's got a good pump at it, and the other one has a good flute, the other one has a good vibrato, and the other one has a stronger tone. So while I was getting this organ, I looked around and the lady said, oh, there's a pile of old music over there. I thought, I don't want any more. And so I drove home. We got the organ there. I couldn't resist. I went back. There it was. Zephyrs from Melodyland. Oh dear. Amongst the stories about the princes of Serendipity is the story about the secret whisperer. As they gained wisdom and experience on their travels, people would come to them with their problems. The princes would listen. They'd listen very patiently and weigh up what they heard. Then they quietly whispered a few secret words to them. Their advice worked to great effect in people's lives. So word spread as it does with this sort of stuff. People came from everywhere to find out what these secret words were. Because those lucky to receive them were pledged to secrecy. And as Jesus said, go and tell no one. Of course, the first thing they did was tell everyone. However, when the princes moved on to other realms amongst the Serendipity Road, the secret became known. The secret whisperer was... Any ideas? The secret whisperer. What would... The secret whisper. Surprise yourself. That's all. Yeah, surprise yourself. How can we do that? By getting out of our daily routine and comfort zone, which is hard in winter. Oh dear. In his little book, Serendipity, I don't know, it was in the library, I don't know whether it's still there. In order to reach a certain height, we must overreach it. To jump a given distance, we need the ability to jump over it. To make a desired impression, we must overlive the cause we hope to make impressive. I understand that because to run 100 metres, we should be able to run a kilometre full speed. I was a 100-metre champion for many years in Tasmania. And I could run 100 metres and be a champion, but I couldn't run the 440. It was just too much. I just didn't have it in me, but I was a natural sprinter. And in my music days, I found out to play a little sonata, which you can rattle off very briefly, you need hours of practice for most people. And the Bach preludes and fugues might even need longer. Now, Albert Einstein wrote, I am enough of an artist to draw freely on my imagination. Imagination is more important than knowledge, and knowledge is limited. Imagination encircles the word. Now, I put this in, it is related. There's another slide here. The word synchronicity, I'll have to read it from here, was coined by the famous mind explorer and psychology pioneer Carl Jung, 1875, 1065. It was a long night last night. To try and explain that which seems elusive and unexplainable. Synchronicity is a process that transpires in the unconscious part of our mind. The words are similar, aren't they? Synchronicity and serendipity, would you say? You need to think about it during the week. Then he goes on to say, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. And what is going on in our unconscious part of the mind, for goodness sake, the stuff that's in there, probably before we were born, could it be past lifetimes? I'm horrified to think when I was at school, we had things like, we were taught Empire Day. And we had to get out there and we were all given boiled lollies and we sang the national anthem. And how patriotic was that? And still a bit of it stays with me. So, to sum up, to make our dreams reality, we use our imagination and make believe. We act as if we're already there. And we know that from our Unity teachings. To be open to the unexpected on the serendipity road, we have to have the courage to step out and keep going, to bounce back. Unpleasant things happen to everyone, good or not so good, in this mystery school for involvement on Mother Earth. We are urged to be insightful, philosophic, and most of all, have a sense of humour. The goals we achieve on the way to the goals we thought we wanted may turn out to be more precious than the goal we originally set to it. So be it. Thank you. Now, Lisa, I didn't want to upstage you,